Greetings all, and welcome to Catch It or Run, a series where I take a look at Pokemon fan games and ROM hacks and provide a full analysis of whether or not the game is worth playing from my perspective, or is better left for others to explore. Today, we have a very special episode covering what may be the most beautiful game I have ever seen in a fan community, and one that both oozes charm and creativity, and yet still feels like an experience that anyone can get involved in. Today, we'll be looking at the ROM hack known as Pokemon Fool's Gold, and seeing just what it has to offer to those that are willing to step into its world.
Now, normally, these reviews involve mainly just myself analyzing and looking into the various aspects of a ROM hack or fan game in order to give a personal opinion on it. But this video is going to be a bit of a special one because, for the first time ever, the bulk of it will not just come from myself. Much of the video will be covering an interview that I conducted with Celadonk, one of the lead developers of the game, and show his take on it all and the experience that has gone into Fool's Gold's creation. Though, first of all, you're probably wondering just what exactly Pokemon Fool's Gold is. The game itself is a ROM hack of Pokemon Crystal, and development of the game initially started back in January of 2019. It very much plays like Crystal, but is a standout in many ways, chief among them being that each of the Pokemon in the game, while retaining their name, have completely different forms and visuals, as well as altered types and movesets, with a lot of extra content further added to the base game of Crystal. The experience of the game alone is something quite interesting, and the reason for its existence is equally fascinating. How exactly did this project start? What was the initial goal for it, and what inspired you all to make it?
So, I think it mostly stems from my sense of humor, and that's kind of a weird segue, but the way I kind of formulate jokes a lot of the times is by making bizarre setups to situations with puns involved at the end. If you've ever read Pearls Before Swine, that's a very common feature of that particular comic strip. That's a comic strip I liked a lot as a kid. So I think it was just a passing thought in my head one day. I was drawing some Pokemon or something, and I thought, wouldn't it be funny if we made if there was a ROM hack of Pokemon Gold where all of the Pokemon were a little different, and it was a bootleg, and it was called Pokemon Fool's Gold. That was a joke in my head, and then I was wait, this is something that we actually have the tools, the capability of doing. So I sent it out to a group chat with my friends, and they were like, yeah, this is a great idea. And then we started just making designs from there. So it kind of just started as just a spur of the moment joke setup that passed through my head. And I was like, wait, that actually legitimately would be a good idea. So that was kind of what inspired us to make it. And the other thing that really helped us along was, first of all, I mean, I'm not an artist by trade, but I do have a lot of experience doing sprite art and Pokemon splices. And then a lot of my friends are actually artists by trade, going to school for art. So we had the capabilities to do this, and at first we used the old binary hacking tools for Pokemon Gold, but because we were originally just doing sprite exchanges, we figured that this would be a very feasible thing. Yeah, so that is how Fool's Gold started. It's kind of funny to think that it started as just a random passing thought.
As mentioned already, the game is designed specifically as a ROM hack for Pokemon Crystal, and aside from some minor alterations to make the game function a bit more like that classic game, like the split of physical and special attacks, there is a reason why the rest of the game plays out very much like the game it was built upon.
Now, the bulk of this game, it does really play like, other Generation 2 games. Did you really feel it's important to keep it that way without altering the mechanics too much?
Yeah, so I feel so I'm not really that into ROM hacks, to be honest, which is kind of ironic coming from the creator of a Pokemon ROM hack. But one of the reasons that I'm not very much into ROM hacks, and this is just an observation, there's a lot of centering on mechanics that focus on altering gameplay and changing mechanics and stuff, and especially for older ROM hacks, adding in new Pokemon, stuff like abilities or mega evolutions or new moves, adjusting the difficulty, adjusting the the distribution of the Pokemon, that's a very common trend for ROM hacks. However, this, not to disparage those ROM hacks, because there definitely is a place for them, and there's definitely a lot of people who like them, otherwise they wouldn't be so famous. But to me personally, I place a lot of emphasis on video games being as much of art projects as they are gaming, like, play experiences. And to me, those, like, difficulty mechanic adjusting hacks, they're impressive, and I'm sure that they're probably a lot of fun, but to me, what's lost on those is the artistic aspect. So for our ROM hack, we felt like Pokemon Gold or Pokemon Crystal, either one, were like solid games to begin with, and I mean, they required some adjustments, but I digress. But our focus was on the artistic aspects of it. Changing the mons, the sprite work, we changed some of the tile sets, I added some new music, stuff like that. So I guess our sticking with Generation 2 mechanics kind of stemmed from that. One of the principles that we kind of hold is whenever people suggest something like running shoes or whatever, it's kind of like a blunt motto, but our motto is polished crystal, we ain't. And polished crystal is a very impressive ROM hack that basically updates all the mechanics, adds new Pokemon, stuff like that. And the reason I say polished crystal, we ain't, is to illustrate how different the goals of polished crystal and fool's gold are. The goals of polished crystal, and it executes them great, is to update Pokemon Crystal, polish it into a more modern, more accessible Pokemon game. Whereas our goal was to have a bunch of fun new designs and make something that is like kind of like fun to show off as an art project. And then the other main reason I would say is that we're very interested, I guess, in the jankiness of early Pokemon games. It's very well known how buggy Gen 2 and especially Gen 1 are, but less than the bugs. There's like a lot of like kind of baffling design decisions that maybe they hinder the gameplay a little bit, but more than that, I think they add to the personality of Gen 1 and Gen 2. And after all, this is Pokemon Fool's Gold. It originated as kind of like a bootleg of Pokemon Gold. So we did want it to be fairly close to to Pokemon Gold. I do want to note that although it's called Pokemon Fool's Gold after Pokemon Gold, it's actually a ROM hack of Pokemon Crystal. And the only reason that is because at the time, maybe things are different now, but at the time, Pokemon Crystal just had a lot more tools available and there was a lot more freedom to ROM hack it than Pokemon Gold.
However, for those that might initially assume that the game itself doesn't really have much more to it than just being a simple hack of Crystal, there's news in store for that as well, as it actually has a lot of new content, and there's a reason why for its inclusion was made to help increase the overall scope and value of the final product for Fool's Gold.
And it's funny that you also mentioned about new content, because there is new content in here. So I'm curious, how did you go about planning everything out and putting it in the game?
So, originally our mindset was we're just going to change the designs, the types, maybe some of the movesets. That was our original goal, and it was going to be like a super low-key ROM hack. It wasn't going to be... like, all of the work pretty much was going to be in the designing and the spriting phases. But as we went on, we started to expand our scope a little. So I mentioned earlier that we originally started with the binary ROM hacking programs that you would just put your ROM in, like do some things with the program, and then it'd spit a new ROM out. And these are really easy to use. However, the more we did of it, the more just like random things would fuck up. Excuse my language. So we used this one program that was super janky looking. It looked like it was probably 20 years old to replace all the sprites. But the more sprites we replaced, the higher the chance that like some other random sprite would get changed for no reason. Like a trainer sprite or like a random back sprite that we hadn't put in. And eventually we did this so much that like the game just crashed. So my suspicion was these programs were not very rigorously tested, and whenever you would put something in the ROM, like a new image, it would like randomly like change data somewhere else, I guess. So
I remember I've seen that a lot actually, especially in Generation 1. Missing no. Oh, missing no. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was just random chances for like sprites to glitch up or be overwritten. So we made the tough decision. It was a tough decision at the time. Now it seems obvious, but back then it was a tough decision to move to the disassembly of Pokemon Crystal. And at the time, there was a disassembly of Pokemon Gold, but it was unfinished and pretty much unusable. So we moved to the disassembly of Pokemon Crystal pretty much exclusively so that we could change out these images without having to worry about anything random just changing on a whim. But this actually also gave us the opportunity to change a bunch of other stuff, even though we didn't really have plans to do it. For example, Fool's Gold has updated tile sets that changed some of the palettes. Pokemon trainer parties, that wasn't something we were planning on changing. Falconer probably, if the binary programs worked the way that they were supposed to, Falconer probably still would have had, he wouldn't have had a Meryl, for example, which is a flying type now. But, so, it was just the option was open for us to change a lot more than we could before. So we were like, let's take the option. And it just kind of, I guess, spiraled from there. But I think it ended up being for the better.
I'd like to next mention the music of the game, though there isn't exactly a lot to be said on the matter. In keeping with the philosophy that there's no real need to alter things if they are part of the authentic Gen 2 experience, the soundtrack for the game is almost virtually unchanged. The same lively tunes that everyone is used to in the Generation 2 games, from the sound of wide open spaces, to the interior of many caves, the Pokémon League, and so much more are all intact. On that same token, however, there are new music tracks that help to define many of the new locations and even battles that have been put into play here. While a lot of these newer tracks are just part of the lattermost parts of the full game, and thus are bare left for others to discover, I can certainly agree here once again with the notion that it is best to keep things as they are, as the soundtrack already complements the game in its original state.
With that out of the way, now let's move on to the one aspect of Fool's Gold that serves as its biggest draw, the Pokémon.
With every single species in the game, along with others buried deep in the post-game, retains the same name and some breeding attributes, their appearances, types, and moves have all been altered in some way, shape, or form, creating new entries with different looks, types, movesets, and even Pokédex entries that help them all to stand out. This is essentially what made the backbone of Fool's Gold, and is the paramount aspect of it that, to me, serves as the most inspiring and entertaining part of the entire game. Without necessarily granting us Fakemon or anything of that sort, in my opinion, it managed to find a way to make the entire experience with all present Pokémon feel fresh and unique, requiring veteran trainers like myself to throw out the usual rulebook and really have fun with the material at hand, both in experimentation and in training. I found it to be an overall pleasant surprise within the game, and an obvious symbol of just how much love and care really went into designing it. Moreover, their origins and the way they were designed are both understandable and really make sense in light of the game's initial life as a joke. And one of the most important things, of course, as you mentioned, is the changes that have happened to all the Pokemon. I've gone through the entire game, I've completed the decks twice, it is a wonderful thing. I have to say though, some of the changes made to the appearances and types, but mainly the appearances of some Pokemon, some of them are hilarious, some of them make sense, and honestly some of them, I wasn't sure what to make of them, so how exactly did all this come about? Because a lot of them are either beautiful takes, or original transformations, or what clearly seem to be in-jokes to any fan of Pokemon, so what was the process going into designing all this?
So going on to the process of designing Pokemon, so one of the trends that you'll notice probably through these questions is that there isn't probably as much thought that goes into Fool's Gold as you might think. I mean, we do put some thought into it, but usually the way we design Pokemon and pretty much everything else is just like on a whim. So, for example, I was like, I think it would be really funny to make Hoppip a potato. Like, that was like probably a very accurate representation of my thoughts. So we kind of like, with each batch of Pokemon, because originally we were only going to do Gen 2 Mons and leave Gen 1 Mons the way that we were. I have no idea why we were planning on doing this. I'm glad we changed that, but we started with just the Gen 2 Mons, and we did this for each pool of Pokemon, where we just took the ones that jumped out in our heads immediately. So I think it was like, I knew that I wanted to make Hoppip a potato, and then one of my other friends knew that they wanted to make Ladybug into a lightning bug, and it was just like, we started with the obvious ones, and then the ones that were left, we kind of like waited for the right idea to come, and sometimes this took longer than others. Later on, like later into the 1.0 process, and then especially during the 1.3 process, we started taking a slightly different approach, where instead of like waiting for the idea to come, and this only worked for some of the Pokemon, mind you, we would come up with an idea for a Pokemon that we wanted to see, and then we would, like a concept that we really wanted to see in a Pokemon, and then we'd find the right Pokemon for that concept. So kind of backwards. An example in the base version, the first version, is Skarmory probably stands out as being one of the stranger mons because it's no longer a bird at all, and even though it has the same head, it's completely different. It's an Ouroboros or a hoop snake now. And that came about not because I was like, oh, Skarmory would make the perfect hoop snake, and that idea just popped into my head. The reason that idea came about was because I really wanted there to be an Ouroboros Pokemon, and I was looking through the list, and Skarmory was the only one left that fit, so I decided to just run with it. And we did this a ton with the new 1.3 Mons, and I think it's a very interesting design process because it helps us put the concept first and then find the right home for a good concept, rather than trying to brute force a concept into a Pokemon that we're not sure what to do with.
However, it doesn't just stop there. Aside from the long and loving task of putting together all of these different designs for the many Pokemon that fans have come to love over the years, for a select number of Pokemon families, another concept from recent times was put into the latter design process, and to me, it was done in a way that didn't feel forced, but instead felt like a natural inclusion for a game of this caliber. Regional variance. While this can be a bit of a contentious topic to some, I have always supported the idea of regional variance in Pokemon games, and find that it can really help to spice things up and give an older or otherwise marginalized Pokemon a fresh coat of paint and a new personality, not to mention brand new opportunities to add a new Pokemon without having to necessarily create entirely new species. Fool's Gold managed to capture the essence of what makes regional variants worth having, both for the sake of fun and creativity, and for variety, and as far as I'm concerned, the inclusion of them really helped to make Fool's Gold feel more authentic to me as a genuine Pokemon gaming experience. Perhaps even more so than some modern mainline series games, as was touched upon by Celadonk. Now when it comes to variety, I will also note, and given we're already talking about the 1.3, this won't be so much as spoilers, but once trainers manage to get through Johto and then through Kanto, there is a big surprise in that second part. You all put in regional variants. Now how did that come into play?
Well, I mean, going back to the design process and the design philosophy of Fool's Gold, that was just like a spur-of-the-moment idea. It was like, I was like, hey, wouldn't it be fun to have Cantonian forms? Because, like, I remember watching the trailer for Sun and Moon when they first revealed a Alolan Sandshrew and Sandslash and a Alolan Exeggutor, and I was like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Oh, people lost their shit with Exeggutor. People still lose it with Exeggutor. It is a literal walking meme, and no one can deny it.
Yeah, so I was very struck by that when that first came out. But like, I think part of it is that throughout the process, people often asked things like, are you going to make a Fool's Gold version of Alolan Executor? And to me, like, I didn't tell them to their face, but in my head I was like, that's kind of a silly idea, because Alola isn't in Fool's Gold. And then I started thinking, I think that kind of planted the seeds for just the, like, idea, like that, like, light bulb above my head to light up for Cantonian forms. I was like, wait, we should make some Cantonian forms. And this also gave me kind of an opportunity to do some things that I wish the Pokemon series did, like the main series. Like, one of the big things that I wish they did was do split evolutions for the starters, because it seems like every generation there's more and more contention over how the starters evolve. Because in older generations, I feel like more or less you could pick a starter and, like, reasonably expect what it's going to look like at the end. But nowadays, and I actually do like the modern starter designing philosophy, but it's kind of like a bait and switch. Like, thinking about Poplio from Generation 7, absolutely nobody expected that it was going to turn into an opera singer. So I think one thing that the main series would benefit from, like, is to have split evolutions for the starters. And then tying into that with Fool's Gold, one of my favorite mons from Fool's Gold is Feraligatr, but it's also one that I know that a lot of people didn't really like. So we were kind of able to use those two kind of combined concepts to be like, we should have, like, a Cantonian version of the final starter. And as it turns out, Cantonian Typhlosion ended up being one of the fan favorite mons of 1.3.
Now, one of the major aspects I often look for in my reviews of ROM hacks and fan games in general is the difficulty that is associated with them.
It's no secret that a lot of the more popular fan projects tend to ramp up the difficulty to a degree that often exceeds that of the main series games for one reason or another. And while this can work in favor of some games, at times, it can also still make them a total chore to get through, and can potentially take away from the fun experience of a game if it's not balanced correctly. Thankfully, Pokémon Fool's Gold, from my perspective, is one of the good examples of how to balance difficulty without going overboard, and celadonk did have some choice words on the matter to share. Now, one of the things I really want to touch upon is something, because I've reviewed other fan games before. Before Fool's Gold, my favorite was always Clover. Clover, I think, is one of the few games where, when you describe the design choice of trying to make them too cool, oh no, Clover knows who's making it, and it just plays to that base. Which is a shame, because, and this is just a small item I'll put out there, apparently there's been things going on in the development of it, despite the fact the game's been done for a while now. Like, the whole wiki for it is gone. Like, it no longer exists. I don't know what's going on. But when I look at Clover, though, as much as I love it, there's one thing it does that really drives me batty that you all did much better, and that is handling difficulty. Because I've played through a lot of ROM hacks, and one of the easiest way to claim that your ROM hack is quote-unquote unique or special is by ratcheting up the difficulty. Now, I know there's been a lot of complaints about people in the mainline series games that things are too easy or whatnot, but at the same time, the design philosophy here, difficulty is just one aspect of it. You don't make it the defining aspect, because personally, the games out there that ratchet up that difficulty all the way, except for maybe one or two, I think they're all kind of crap. But you did that, but you made a point to not go too far. How exactly did you balance the difficulty when you altered it for the game?
So I think, first of all, the disclaimer to be made is that we haven't intentionally made Fool's Gold more hard. I think that there are a lot of factors that, like, I guess unintentionally made it harder. Like, one of the most notable ones was in the very first version of Fool's Gold. A lot of people were very annoyed by the amount of Ghost and Steel types early game when you only have normal types. So, like, accidental things that happen like that. And then also, I think the fact that people are less familiar with the Mons, especially on a first playthrough. Like, when you're playing a normal Pokemon game, like, the enemy says, okay, they're going to switch out to this Mon, and you know exactly what type it is, you know exactly what moves to do. Not so the case in Fool's Gold, at least if you haven't played it before, or am not, like, an expert in it. So I think the surprise factor helps out a lot with that too. And then the other thing that I think affects it is Johto's level curve is infamously bad. So in 1.3, we made a point to try to even it out a little bit more, and Kanto definitely too. And the way I was kind of going into it is, if it's like distractingly easy or distractingly hard, it's going to be fine, but I was fine with it being like maybe a little harder or a little easier than it was before. And it did end up being a little harder than it was before. So that was just a side effect of how we chose to balance the level curve. It wasn't really an intentional difficulty increase. So touching about my opinions on difficulty, first of all, I've already touched on difficulty hacks before and why they're not for me personally. But then it just kind of ties into a couple broader themes. One is, I want this to be like generally a Gen 2 experience, you know, and like messing with the difficulty too much, like making it a difficulty hack, that would, I think, be against the spirit of Generation 2. The second thing is Pokemon specific. A lot of people call for higher difficulty in Pokemon games, and this is actually a hot take that I have that I've kind of always disagreed with. I think that Pokemon, as it stands right now, is at a perfect difficulty level where its baseline is super easy, but there is so much that the player can do to make it harder, like Nuzlocke challenges, mono-type challenges, using one Mon, stuff like that. So Pokemon already has the tools to make it harder. I don't think it needs a difficulty increase. And it is games that are designed for children too, so I think the baseline should be as low as you can reasonably make it. And then the third reason is like a games-specific thing, like games in general. I don't like playing difficult video games because the reason I play video games is to like feel accomplished, and if you're just like dying over and over and over and over, there's not really much like I think the accomplishment that you get out of that is overweighed by the time sink. And then I generally take video games in as an art form and not like a playing medium. And I think oftentimes I've played video games that like are intended to be art projects, but I'm just walled by the difficulty. For example, Mother 3 is a game that's pretty famous for its like great soundtrack, like witty writing and like heartbreaking plot. And I was very enticed into Mother 3 for those reasons, but I was also frustrating at how freaking hard it is. Like, I'm playing the game for the story, and it was just annoying to me. I just don't find difficult games to be fun. And I also believe that video games should be as accessible to most people as is reasonable. And the thing is, not everybody has the same level of skill. Like, I have probably a much lower level of skill playing video games than average. So, to me, it, like, sucks that, like, if you make a game too hard, there's, like, a significant portion of a potential player base that will never be able to, like, experience this game to its full potential. Whereas a higher skill player may get more enjoyment out of a game that's harder, that's more to their skill level, but ultimately they can still like appreciate an easy game as an art form. So those are just my broad takes about difficulty in video games and how they kind of boil down into Fool's Gold. We tried not to mess with the difficulty too much, and yeah, they're a little harder than Crystal is. I don't really see a problem with that, but yeah, I just am not really into the idea of making it harder.
One of the last things I'd like to cover on the game has to do with its shiny rate. As a shiny hunter myself, I will admit that I am obsessed with shiny Pokemon and enjoy collecting them, even in fan games where they really can't be transferred into the main series games. Fool's Gold is actually one of the few games that changes the way they work by making them much easier to obtain, and I couldn't help but ask why they were made so much easier to encounter. Now, speaking of this, moving on from difficulty, there's one aspect before we wrap up that I really want to make note of, because whether you were aware or not, I am a professional shiny hunter. I actually have a shining living dex. Authentic. Everything. you did something about that in Fool's Gold. You actually altered the normal base rate for encountering shinies. Why did you do that? Because, like, shinies are just, one fan part of it, and it's kind of it's a weird thing because either you really don't care, or you're kind of obsessed. There's not always a ton of middle ground, so why did you guys make the choice to actually make it easier to get shinies?
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons going into here, but first I want to say that I actually like how difficult the main series games make it to find shinies. I honestly prefer the 1 out of 8,000 chance over the 1 out of 4,000 chance in modern generations. And I played Pokemon Legends Arceus and I loved it, but one of my complaints was that finding shinies is so easy because you can just see them on the overworld and they make a sound effect. And I brought this up to some people and they were like, well, weren't you the guy that made shinies only 1 in 1,000 in your ROM hack? And there are a few reasons for this, but like I do want to make the disclaimer that I do like shinies as being a super rare thing. But for Fool's Gold specifically, I realized that it's a ROM hack, it's a fan project, and people are not going to be spending, in general, there are a few people who spend a lot of time with Fool's Gold, but in general people are going to be spending a lot less time playing a ROM hack than they are playing a main series game. So we wanted to kind of offset that because, like, I don't think people would be shiny hunting in Pokemon Fool's Gold basically at all if it was still at 1 out of 8,000. I mean, there'd probably be a few people that would, but I think setting it to 1 out of 1,000 gives people a reason to play Fool's Gold more because people are not going to be willing to spend as much time shiny hunting on a ROM hack, but if the shiny rates are high enough, then maybe they will. So that's one of the reasons. Another one of the reasons is, like the main series games, we do put like a fairly considerable amount of effort into designing these shiny palettes, and again, we're not like a big studio, we're like a fan project. Game Freak can make shiny palettes for their Pokemon, and they can set the rates like on 1 out of like 20,000, and they'll be fairly sure that people will like know what those shiny palettes are, but we don't have that degree of certainty because we're a smaller project. But we also still want people to like see the shinies, right? That we spent so much time on. So much time. It's not really that much time, but we did spend some effort into the shiny. So we just wanted like to boost the shiny rates just so that like they're out there, you can see the shinies without having to like put too much work into it, And then the third reason, this one's just the simplest one. We want to reward people for playing our game because, like, again, we're not a big studio. We're just a couple of kids, basically. I mean, I'm not a kid anymore, but I was when I started Fool's Gold. So we wanted to reward people for giving some love to like a small project,
To conclude the interview for the game, I actually asked something that I really couldn't normally ask anyone when it comes to reviewing a game like Fool's Gold, and that's really what the most difficult aspect of its creation was. We rarely get to see or hear the exact processes that go behind making these sort of projects, so I really wanted to take the opportunity that I had to take a look into the backrooms to see just what it took to make this game what it is.
Last thing I want to ask, honestly, because we've talked a little bit back and forth about how the development has gone in the past and then in the present, what would you say has been the hardest part of making Fool's Gold into what it is today?
So, I would like to preface this by saying that my career is in music education. And I specify this particularly because I'm passionate about education. Obviously, I wouldn't have chosen it as a career if I wasn't. But so I'm trying to like reframe my thoughts in a way that is tactful. So in 1.3, we have not done anything innovative, I don't think. But the process for like getting to know how to do some of these like fairly easy things, well, easy for somebody who knows what they're doing, like almost thoughtless for somebody who knows what they're doing, has been exceedingly difficult because it seems like there's like, the people who know what they're doing with Gen 2 ROM hacking are the people who are the least likely to share what they're doing, I guess. I don't know how else I can frame that, but from an education standpoint, like, I get it if you want to, like, have people, like, figure it out by themselves, kind of. Like, the whole, like, teach a man to fish philosophy. But I think, as an educator, how I would do it is, like, say I knew, like, a shit ton about Pokemon Gen 2 ROM hacking. And this is, like, kind of an experience that I've had myself, drawing from one of, like, the experiences that I've had myself. Say somebody asked me, hey, I'm having a problem where Pokemon are evolving into the wrong Pokemon for the Cantonian and Sevian evolutions. This happened, by the way, where, like, so it was skipping over the end of the evolution and it was using the next move to evolve. So I sent out a question basically saying this, and I shared my code because I want to make it, like, as easy as possible for the people who know more. Here's how I, as an educator, and I assume most other people as educators would have responded to that. I would say, yeah, here's how you do it. Send the adjusted code back. It was literally one line I had to change, by the way. And then explain what happened there so that they can learn from that experience. But the mentality for in Gen 2 ROM hacking spheres is that you got to figure it out by yourself. And the only way you're going to figure it out by yourself is to like, learn assembly inside and out. And, like, I think it would be pretty foolish of me to go into a Gen 2 ROM hacking like scene and know literally nothing. So I did, like, teach myself a little bit of assembly, but that's only going to get you so far unless you, like, know everything about the inner workings of Generation 2. So let me pull up, like, the metaphor I made that I thought was fairly apt. And it's an exaggeration because it's a metaphor, but what I said about it once was, sorry, I'm pulling this up just because I think it's a good quote. Like, I would probably say, like, geez, I'm having trouble finding it. I definitely said something like, yeah. So it's like, sorry, I'm filling time a lot, but I feel like it's like asking how to backstroke in swim class and then being, like, told to read a physics textbook on water resistance. That is, like, a good summary of the experience, because, like, ultimately I do understand how assembly works from a baseline level, but it's just, like, I've had experiences where it's been, like, extremely unhelpful people. So I haven't had people ask me for code yet because, like, I'm not an expert, you know. But if people ask me for code, you bet your ass I'm going to give it to them because I'm a nice person and I also believe in educational principles. And then, like, again, I get this was a tweet I saw, to continue quoting things. This was a tweet I saw that was fairly apt. You can give a man, this is from @Lors Joberg for credit. You can give a man a fish and then teach him to fish, you know, and it's a lot easier to learn how to fish when you're not starving. That is the biggest difficulty I've had for Fool's Gold. I did pretty much have to figure out these things that would have been trivial for somebody who knows what they're doing to do. And I know that because it ended up being, like, literally changing one line for most of these. I did end up figuring it out by myself, which means that the people I was asking for help won because that's what they wanted me to do. But it was just so frustrating getting to that point. I'm a big believer in video games as an art form too. And like, for a lot of people have stories that they want to tell, and video games is the best way for them to tell it, or they have a vision. But the problem is that there is such, like, a large skill hurdle to overcome to make a video game. And I think that making video games is something that should be more accessible. If you're a coder who knows what they're doing, I think you have a responsibility to show people what to do, just as I, as a music teacher, have a responsibility to show people how to make music rather than to tell them to figure it out by themselves or read a textbook on acoustics. That's my rant. I tried to restrain myself as much as possible. There's a lot of choice words I could use, but yeah.
In completing this review of Pokemon Fool's Gold, I have a few final words I would like to share on the game. While I normally enjoy going into deep detail on my own on the various aspects of any sort of fan project I turn my attention to, I chose to undergo a change in the way this video was made for an important reason. Pokemon Fool's Gold on its own is a great game and more than worth reviewing to the utmost, but at the same time it's a game that doesn't change much in the way of fundamentals for it to require a full breakdown of the pros and cons of it, and I think that is honestly the point of it in a way, much as celadonk stated. The game itself is more of an art project than a serious game to sink one's teeth into, and yet there is so much more to bite into than what a simple review on its own can accomplish. I knew that the game was something special just from the way it was made, and enjoying the community that is centered around the game, I felt a different approach was needed to really get the most out of a review, which is why I wanted to go the way of an interview, and I'd say that it paid off in spades. Not only have I been able to really get to the meat of it all and learn about the game's structure and development straight from the mouth of one of the fine people responsible for its creation, but I got a view of the sort of people that make these projects and what they value in the games the most compared to anyone else. What spurs people like celadonk to make these projects and to create a unique experience for players. It is not something that is openly seen in public discourse, and for that, it has been a lovely glimpse into not just the production of this one game, but into the background of the creators of fan projects in general, and what drives them to make their vision a reality. Pokemon Fool's Gold is a fantastic ROM hack that doesn't deviate far from the Generation 2 roots it is based in, and in turn makes for a fantastic experience to all that are a part of its world and the community that surrounds it. Even if viewers and players alike might not always like the Gen 2 aesthetic, the game makes everything feel so incredibly fresh and new that I honestly couldn't say I would want it in any other format. From the gameplay, difficulty and visuals, to the sound of its music, and the way it has managed to become a far larger adventure than its original base game, with plenty in store for newcomers and veterans alike.
So, with that, is the game worth it? Should we catch it or run? Well, to me the answer is quite simple. Catch it! With that, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all next time. Thank you for watching this video. It brings me great joy to be able to speak to you all in the world each and every time we meet like this, to explore the many different facets of both the world of Pokemon as we know it, and the world as we live it, through every adventure we have with Pokemon by our side. If you'd like to, please subscribe, ring the bell and all that jazz, to keep yourself updated on content uploads and other materials of the like. You can also follow me on Twitter if you'd like to know right away when something new is uploaded, and my written works, from which most of this is based on, can be found on DeviantArt. Links to both can be found in the description down below. Remember that the world of Pokemon is a place full of wonder and mystery, and you never know what to expect. So, stay vigilant, keep watch, and always be prepared for the unexpected. Until next time, trainers and friends of all sorts, have a wonderful time.